Well, thank you very much again for being here today, despite the wonderful weather outside, and you decided to stay indoors and join us for this talk. As Julian mentioned, this is the sixth talk in the History from Ancient Coins lecture series. Those who attend these talks for the first time, Julian kindly created a YouTube channel for me and for Paul's website, Perfectus Coins. There is the link at the end of this presentation for you to go. And also, I usually post my presentation as is after the talk to my academia profile. So you will see the link to my academia profile as well. So the presentation is going to be available in a full format for you to download and view again, use if you like, spread. I do not demand any copyrights. The most important thing is that we share and spread the information. And before I start, I would like to give my thanks to Julian and Paul for their technical and financial support to make these talks available. Okay, today we're going to talk about the Roman Republican coinage. Previously, I offered these lectures to the Vancouver School Board first, actually, and then the Simon Fraser University for their continuing education departments. And last week, or a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about this, Paul suggested that I maybe consider a talk devoted to the Roman Republican coinage, which was right. And the period is extensive, and the coinage of this period is vast from every aspect of it. So I tried to put together a presentation that will give you a glimpse of what's available. But the main idea here is that we study the history of the period. We're not really studying the coins alone, but we also study the history of the period. So I hope you will find it interesting. So who are these people? The Romans. There are many tales about them, at least 3 different tales, but most of those tales simply come up in the 1st century BC, or they had been circulating around, but they were not really documented until the 1st century BC. So here I have 3 coins. Actually, there should be a 4th coin here, so let me put them all together. So Julius Caesar simply claims that his family lineage is connected to Venus, and also through Venus he connects himself to the mythology of Aeneas, and he depicts that on his coins. Simply it talks about the foundation of the city of Rome, immigrants coming from Troy after it was destructed. And then, of course, there is the story of Romulus and Remus, the offsprings of Mars, the god of war, or Hercules, according to some others, and Rhea Silvia, the Vestal Virgin. And And then referring to that, they also talk about Mars seeing Rhea sleeping by the river on this coin of Antoninus Pius. And there's also the story of the Saul under the holm oak, suckling 7 piglets and a white one among them. When Aeneas arrives the shore of the river, the story goes that he would see this Saul with the piglets, and that's where it was predicted that he would found the city. But these are all the stories, and of course the foundation of the city is real, and archaeological research and excavations have revealed that there is settlement in that area for more than 5,000 years, and it has been an old settlement, an unfortunate one, because consecutive layers were all built on top of one another, simply destroying the previous ones. So what is left is very, very little. Coinage came to the Roman Republic very late. When you look at the means of exchange in the 5th, 4th century BC, it's a little disgraceful. When you compare what was circulating only a couple hundred miles or kilometers to the south. When they finally came to the understanding of putting something on their means of exchange, Naples, only 160 kilometers south of Rome, was using extraordinarily beautiful silver coinage. And when they finally decided to make a round of maybe for the first time what we can call coins, and they were simply about to destroy the Macedonian kingdom of Philip V. This was what the Macedonian king had while they had crude, round, heavy cast first coins. I would like to just give you a brief background of the Roman Republic. The political structure was a collective and annual magistracies overseen by a senate. They toppled the kingdom just at the beginning of the 6th century, 507, 506. Their top magistrates were the 2 consuls that were elected every year. They had some executive, legislative, judicial, military, and religious powers. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind is that while they had elections each year, Rome was a republic, it was not a democracy. They imitated to the south, but theirs was an oligarchy, as a small number of powerful families monopolized the main magistracies. So regular people in the street had no chance to enter the Senate. Interestingly, the history of Rome is the history of wars. They were always in war, and it is sometimes defined as quasi-perpetual war. So its first enemies were its Latin and Etruscan neighbors, as well as the Gauls. They even sacked the city in 387. After the Gallic sack, Rome conquered the whole Italian peninsula in a century. This is really interesting. They are being attacked, they attack, they're being attacked, and they recover, and they continue conquering. Their greatest enemy was, of course, Carthage, and they had 3 wars. They had 2-3 wars with other enemies, but their greatest enemy was Carthage at that time. Hannibal invaded Italy, and he was about to annihilate Rome, but for whatever reason, he didn't do that. He waited, and then he simply perished himself. With the Carthage defeated, Rome became the dominant power of the ancient Mediterranean world. It then embarked on a long series of difficult conquests after having notably defeated Philip of V and Perseus of Macedon, Antiochus III, Lusitanian Viriatus, the Numerian Jugurtha, the Pontic king Mithridates VI, and the Gaul Vercingetorix, and finally, Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. Now, interestingly, they started with no gold, no silver, just copper ingots, lumps, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't use any coins. You cannot really conduct so many military campaigns, let alone business transactions, trade, without coinage. They were a city of ambitious people. Where it comes from is a mystery, but they were very, very ambitious. And they simply didn't feel the need to strike coins, but I'm quite confident they simply used the coins of their neighbors to the north and to the south, because Etruscans also started at about the same time, but they had good coins. Also, their neighbors to the south had good silver and gold coins. People studying the Latin language found this word pecus, which means cattle, and pecunia means money. And they say that cattle was the main means of exchange at that time, which I disagree. Not everyone had cattle to exchange, and what will you exchange cattle with anyway? However, the two words being so close to one another, people made that assumption. But what ancient writers say is that 100 pounds of bronze could buy 1 ox, 1 cattle. So that is an established information about the currency. As I said, they started with as rude in the 5th, 4th century BC, irregular cast bronze lumps exchanged by weight. And they came in so many different crude shape. They didn't even bother to create a mold. They simply cast them into whatever hole they could find. And interestingly, they don't come with an organized denominational weight standard. They come in so many different weights. So they didn't really care about the weight. Maybe they didn't have the source material in steady order. And here it is 42, almost 43 grams. This is 88 grams. This is, again, very similar to that one. And this one is 697 grams. And it, maybe it's a broken piece, I don't know. But they come in so many different weights. So they simply didn't care about the weight when they cast them, but they just did. And apparently, in exchange, they had to weigh each time they use these lumps for to purchase something. And while they continued casting, apparently they started to circulate, and somebody somehow felt that they needed to mark these lumps. So we start seeing these star-like counter marks. And some auction houses identify them as signatum, but I don't believe that. They are still as rure, and they are simply marked, but consistently marked the same way. So there is a star on one side and a crescent like counter mark on the other side. And you can see that on so many examples available online. And as you see, they all come in different weights. This one is 597 grams, while this one is almost 20 grams. This one is 32 grams, and this one, the online listing didn't have any weight on that. After a while, they say, huh, maybe we should do something about these casts. And they created what is called signatum. So cast with some kind of signs on them, some kind of images. And starting from this point, they became imaginative, and they started to create different dies, and some of them became extremely attractive and elaborate in many ways. And the existing examples simply tell us that they had created multiple dies, and they continuously cast these from different dies. They were all perishable dies, of course. They were all clay dies, and they were casting. Once you cast one, it disappears, and you have to create another one. But they did those and created the ius signatum. And look at the weight of these metal pieces. They are still not coins. Again, they cannot be considered coins because they were not produced at a weight system. So 1 kilo, 141 grams. This is about 2 kilos. This is 1.5 kilos. And this is again 1.3 kilos. They are quite heavy and also big. So we see the mass production from the examples that are available right now on online references and books. So here you see the anchor and tripod piece, and here is another one. It's obviously from a different die. And here is one broken into 2-3 pieces, whatever was necessary at that time. And it was circulated. And here is another one with the bull walking on each side, one to the right, the other one to the left. And here I have 3 examples that are intact. And as you see, they are around 1 kilo 800 grams, quite heavy pieces, yet they are much more advanced than the lumps that they previously started to use. Just wanted to show you these two photographs in the hands of people for you to appreciate the size. Not typical pocket money, as you can see. Now, these pieces, we don't exactly know where they were cast and who did. And so for the first time, we can pinpoint the mint, or the place that the casting workshop to be in Rome, because this one says Romano on it. And here is a better one. This is from the British Museum website. And this one we can simply attribute to the Roman mint. Then we have, it's the same type, but a fragment of the same type. So this one is around 1 kilo 400 grams, and this one is 231 grams. And I have another example that we can attribute to Rome, even though there is no legend on it, because of the figures, the sow on one side and the elephant on the other side. The history of, and the legendary history of the city simply tells us the relevance between these figures and the city of Rome. Fragments, they are abundantly available on online sites and in books, and apparently they were in circulation in great numbers. It's again difficult to attest to the exact usage of these fragments. Anyone can appreciate how difficult it can be to break them into the wanted weight standard. Bronze is not so easy to break, yet not extremely difficult, but you cannot really guarantee how big or how heavy your broken piece will be. So they were simply broken arbitrarily, I believe, and still weighted and used that way. And all the known types that we see here, the bull type and the chicken trident type, anchor tripod type, and again, chicken trident type. Now, the strength of this city, rather enigmatic city, even though we know Rome very well, it is still an enigmatic city. And the strength to many scholars is the war economy and the army of citizens. They fought so many wars in the 4th and 3rd centuries that they simply turned from the brink of devastation completely, but they somehow persevered and conquered. The 1st, 2nd, and the 3rd Samnite Wars, it was a difficult time in the 4th century BC for them, and it continued until the beginning of the 3rd century. Then the Pyrrhic War, Pyrrhus of the Epirus simply came to help to the Tarentum at their invitation, because the Romans simply wanted to expand to the south. poor Epirus worked so hard, and he was triumphant in 3 or 4 of the wars that he fought. However, his losses were so heavy that the saying became, the saying Pyrrhic victory became famous at that time. And of course, they had other wars, especially with the other neighbors to the south at that time. So, as you can appreciate, no military campaign can be conducted without an efficient payment system. And you couldn't wage those wars with those as signatum and or as grave. You needed something else, and they didn't have it, but they had the means to. They had access, I should say, to the means of exchange coming from different places. Oh, by the way, during the military campaigns of the Pyrrhic War, Rome allied with Carthage in 280, and they received quite a bit of silver and gold from Carthage. Who would believe that only a couple years later they would start fighting against one another? In the First Punic War, 264 to 241, of course, when we say this is about 40 years, they didn't fight every day, but the skirmishes continued for quite a long time until one party became completely victorious, and most of the time it was not a complete victory, just the submission of the other party, or simply the other party ceased to fight. And then the Second Punic War, 218 to 201, was quite decisive. And they had a Third Punic War, during which, or at the end of which, they simply annihilated the city of Carthage to get rid of the biggest enemy for good. And the Romans called Carthaginians Punici, or Poeni, hence the Punic War, Tertium Bellum Punicum. So in Turkish, we call them Phoenicia. So the ancient name is quite similar to what they are called in some languages in the Middle East. During this time, they decided to employ some Greek artists and workshops, I believe, to design and mint their first silver coins. They are called Greek-style didrums and drums. And of course, the types are Roman, but the artistry is obviously Greek. And we cannot really talk about a Roman art at the beginning anyway. Very soon we're going to see the representations of the Roman art, and I hope you will see the difference between the Greek art and the Roman art, because it is quite distinctive. From the beginning, we said they pursued a war economy, and obviously, as part of that, Mars is on their coins from the beginning, and Hercules and Apollo, with the horse prancing here. Of course, this is a coin that is reminiscent to the Carthaginian horse. Obviously, they simply thank Carthage for their support during their wars during the Pyrrhic War. And they have other examples of the Greek style drums, and bronze was also introduced at the same time. The interesting part of this series is the legend Romano. They all have the same legend, Romano. Pliny talks about the beginning of the coinage at Rome, but some of his comments are not really reliable. So he says the Roman people coined no silver before Pyrrhus's failure. And he says the currency unit being used at the time was a bronze as weighing 1 pound, which is true. And thirdly, he says earlier bronze had consisted of aesrude or stamped, actually cast bars. That's also partially correct. Silver was coined for the first time in 269 BC, which is not correct, unless he's talking about the Greek style coinage, but he means actually the Roman production of coins. And by implication, the silver consists of denarii, each worth 10 bronze, 1 pound asses. So from this remark, we understand that he talks about the denarius, not the Greek coins, but the date is not correct. And they eventually changed the legend, and it became Roma. And the denominations, smaller denominations, and smaller bronze denominations were also introduced at this time. We can understand that to finance those military campaigns, they needed precious metal coins. And the bronzes were simply to facilitate the daily transactions, small transactions. So these were small pocket money. They were not the real purchasing media to support the wars and campaigns, military campaigns. And interestingly, as soon as the denomination or the currency system was created, inflation begins. And the dram was 7.25 grams at the beginning, and in 20, 30 years, it went down to 6.55, and even below that, more than 10% loss of value. During the same time, they also launched this cast round coins. And we don't have any information where these were cast either. Some numismatists would like to believe that they were cast at Rome, but we don't have that information. But it is possible that they were cast in the city. So what is interesting and impressive is that they come in a standard weight system. Even though they were not struck, we can call them coins. The asignatum and aesrude were not coins. They were simply a sort of means of exchange, but these are real coins. And from the beginning, we see that Romans took this seriously, and there was the discipline to create types for each denomination. As had a certain type, and semis had a different type. So this was very well structured from the beginning. And later on, they introduced different types in the same standards, but the weight simply dropped. And just to give you an idea, as dropped from 330 grams to 270 grams, about 20%. So you're waging wars. Somehow, some people make money, but the general public actually lost money. However, they became victorious. And all of a sudden, we see these three denominations of gold. When I say all of a sudden, it didn't happen so easily. Here is the oath-taking scene on the reverse of all these three denominations, two warriors, one Roman and the other representing the Italian allies, standing facing each other, holding spears and touching with their swords, sacrificial pig held by a youth kneeling left between them. And Rome. So Rome is in despair. Rome is desperate. Rome has to survive. Rome is waiting for total annihilation. Yet, some people don't want to quit. And they simply go to their allies to the south, those they invaded, killed, and destroyed. Now they're asking for their alliance. And it's such a difficult time that bronze simply disappears. And silver is not really available either. They lost thousands of soldiers. They were, remember, they were citizens. They were not just soldiers, they were citizens. And all the money they had in the hand was lost. And they, at that time, they simply started to strike gold coins. And where did the gold come from? It is still unknown where they found this gold. Everybody wants to know, but one speculation is that the neighbors to the south simply provided the raw material to strike these coins. But it is remarkable that they came up with these three denominational currency at a time that they were at the brink of being annihilated. And at the same time, they came up with some more silver and started to strike these two denominations. They are famously known as quadrigatus because of the design, the type of the reverse, and victoriatus because of the design of the smaller denomination. As you see, this one is similar to the earlier D-drums, 6.69, and these are half of that unit, 3.31. And interestingly, Victoriati continued to circulate a decade after the Second Punic War. So we don't have much information about the striking of these coins, but centuries later, Pomponius, a lawyer in the 2nd century AD, says the triumviri monetales were established between 290 to 280 as aeris, argenti, auri flotores. These are simply the junior officials, aspirants to a senatorial career, who are found with the later and continuous title of Il Viri Aere Argento Auro Flando Furiondo, the Collegium of three responsible for the melting and striking of bronze, silver, and gold. We're going to hear that a lot from now on. And Suidas, another source from the 1st century AD, says the mint was set up in the time of the Pyrrhic Wars within the temple of Juno Moneta on the capital, which might not be correct. So the Second Punic War caused such a strain on the Roman economy that monetary system collapsed in 2015. So those are, remember, these are new coins. They were created during the war. And however, the monetary system collapsed. And this led to the introduction of a new denominational system that included the denarius and its fractions and the related gold series in 2011 BC. Here they are. So the denarius, in Latin deni, containing 10, as it is, as its value was 10 assets. So you always see the X mark, 10 mark behind the head of, helmeted head of Roma. And the smaller denominations, they all had their sign. And the gold coins had their sign. And even the sestertius, famously known as large bronze coins during the imperial times, started as a silver fraction of the denarius. And at the same time, they created the serrated denarii, and it is believed that they were specifically produced for circulation outside Italy. So there are many speculations as to how these serrated edges were created, and some would like to believe that they were handmade before striking the coins. So they would cast the flens, and then somebody would use a file or a chisel to chip the edges of the metal and then strike the coins. And this tells us something. During the turmoil, there were many forgeries, and the Roman coins would not be accepted in foreign lands. They had to do something to prove that their coins, their currency was intact, and they created these serrated edge coins. However, I'm not really sure about the way they were produced in the first place. It would take ages to put almost 20 chisel marks around the edges of these coins, but we don't have any other explanation to it at the moment. And during that time, it was taboo to have a living person's image on a coin. As you'll remember, we're talking about the Roman Republic, and it's a taboo to go back to a kingdom. So no one is more important than the state, and the state is represented by the Senate, and the Senate has 2 consuls and other smaller officers, and no one can stand before the others, so they cannot appear, their images cannot appear on anything other than their own personal display. And here, for the first time, a Roman appears on a coin outside of Rome, of course. This is Titus Quintus Flaminus, Apparently, he was a consul in 198 BC, sent to Greece, defeated Philip V, facing a Macedonian withdrawal from Greece as part of the peace terms. Philomenos announced the unrestricted freedom of the Greeks in Europe at the Isthmian Games in 196. According to ancient sources, the ovation he received from the crowd was so great that birds fell from the sky in shock, and his speech gained him immense popularity in Greece, including divine honors. So, tongue-in-cheek, we can see how popular he was, but the coin, the gold coin that was struck in his name, simply attests to his popularity or his strength or influence in that area. The early Republic denominations were a little different from the caste ones, but almost similar in terms of names and signs. So, As always had the head of Janus, and Semis head of Saturn, Trians head of Minerva, Quadrans head of Hercules, Sextans head of Mercury, Uncia or Uncia head of Bellona. And interestingly, they all had the mark value. It is quite an elaborate system, which the other city-states or kingdoms didn't think of doing or didn't come up with the idea at that time. But the Romans did that. And from the beginning, as grave, as was 355 grams, and in 270 BC. And you see how it became 51.85, 52. So the heaviest one would be 55 grams. You can see the scale of inflation. And the Rome's final terms for Carthaginian surrender included an enormous war indemnity of 10,000 talents. That's a big sum, and you can see that sum translated into the coin production during the aftermath of the war. You have an enormous output of coinage from the Roman mint. So the Trasviri monetates were appointed annually, 3 at a time, to hold office for a year. They used their own symbols and at the beginning, and then certain monograms and initials of their names, abbreviated or full names. So you have so many different types, but they were all somehow signed and made sure that whoever was responsible for the production of the coins was clearly indicated. You have the fly here, you have the dog here, and the dog again here, and you have the dolphin here. When you see them all side by side, you think that you see the same thing, but there are so many differences to see and marvel. And then, of course, the names and the monograms and the titles of those who presided over the production of these coins. Then comes the social war. Coinage of the Marsic Confederation during 90 to 88 BC. The revolt of Rome's Italian allies broke out toward the close of the year 91 BC, and it could only be suppressed largely through political concession of granting Roman citizenship to the enemy. Thereafter, all of Italy, south of the Po, was united by this common bond. So everyone became Roman. And here we see, and on these coins, you see legends in Oscan and in other languages of the region. And they are not Roman coins. They are the coins of the Marsic Confederation. So they are the ones who fight against Rome for their rights. And interestingly, they were able to issue coins. And this one is really interesting in that on the reverse is a bull moving right, trampling on the she-wolf. The image is quite representative of the movement. And they somehow managed to get what they wanted. And the common coinage came from the league itself, and it is inscribed, or the legend simply is Italia on this one, and on some others you have the names of the generals. Interestingly, like imperatorial coinage, certain generals simply issued coins in their name during that time. And serrated coinage comes back in the 1st century BC. Cicero talks about his friend and cousin, Marius Gratidianus, praetor in the mid-80s. He says that he received great popular acclaim for devising tests for false coins and for withdrawing all those fake coins. He was killed during Sulla's proscriptions, as he was a partisan of the political faction known as the Populares, a rival of the Optimates, the faction of Sulla and the rich. And these types are really interesting. For the first time, a sign of the mint will come on the obverse of this coin with the tongues behind and an eagle on thunderbolt on the reverse. And here, a mythological figure, Ulysses walking, greeted by his dog, with the Mercury on the obverse. And here is another example of the serrated coinage and one more serrated type. These are extensive series of coins. You can find many others. Again, were they simply produced to export or to use outside Italy? I'm not sure about that. But the reintroduction of the serrated coinage simply tells us that forgeries were quite common at that time. And then comes the time of the imperatores. Until the end of the 2nd century BC, the Roman Republic protected its constitution from fundamental changes. The Populares emerged as a political group with the reforms of the Gracchi brothers, the grandsons of Scipio Africanus. They were aristocrats who were tribunes, but they were also the tribunes of the plebs between 133 and 121 BC. Interestingly, even though they were well off, they were concerned for the urban poor, whose dire condition increased the risk of a social crisis at Rome. They tried to implement a vast social program comprising a grain dole, new colonies, and a redistribution of the ager publicus in order to alleviate the situation. They also drafted laws to grant Roman citizenship to Italian allies and reformed the judicial system to tackle corruption. Guess who wouldn't like that? And both brothers were murdered by their opponents, the Optimates, the conservative faction representing the interest of the landed aristocracy, which dominated the Senate. And who represents the optimatus past? Sulla. And Sulla emerges from a conflict and eventually war with a very influential general and consul, Marinus. The story is very nicely romanticized in a novel, which I recommend that you consider reading. It's really interesting. And Sulla, after learning the art of politics and war from Marinus, became such a prominent figure that he embarked on campaigns on behalf of Rome, and then came back with his army. For the first time, he entered the city with his army, which was unprecedented at that time, and he introduced his own coinage. Here we see a gold stater at that time. It's a heavy one, as you see, 10.79 grams, almost 11 grams. That's why I call it a stater. It's not an aureus. And on the obverse, as you can expect, helmeted head of Roma. And on the reverse, many would like to believe that Sulla himself, crowned by flying victory in Quadriga. So he's victorious, he's entering the city on a quadriga, in a quadriga. And the same type appears on a silver denomination. And other types appear in gold and silver, representing the image of Sulla. And maybe the most interesting one is this aureus or stater, actually 10.75 grams again, minted in an eastern city. We don't know which one. It's quite rare though. Great bust of Roma on the obverse, and on the reverse, Sulla, laureate and wearing sago on horseback, rising right hand in acclamation. So this is, again, very, very new, unheard of, unseen, but still it is not very kingly according to the Roman people. So he was allowed to appear on the reverse of a coin without really proclaiming to be a king. And this way, the coinage production by military commanders start at Rome. Simply Sulla didn't need any moneyers, especially during his campaigns in the East. And he started to produce his own coins, which again must have made some senators frown upon, but they had nothing to do about that. Interestingly, from this moment on, bronze coinage disappears. So that only tells us something. If the bronze coinage disappears, that means the economy is not good. So the daily transaction simply had to rely on barter. And these coins simply were in the hands of the wealthy. The second imperatorial coinage belongs to Pompeius the Magnus. Pompeius was a prominent general. He was not one of the rich families. Rose to prominence thanks to his military skills. However, he became one of the most important figures in the history of the Roman Republic. And his coinage simply identifies him as Magnus, which was a cognomen given to him by the Senate. And he used it very proudly and widely on his coinage. And during this time, there's no bronze coinage. The bronze coinage will come after. And the only available bronze coinage is in Spain, issued by Sextus Pompeius at that time. Oh, the image of Pompeius the Magnus only appears on the coinage of his son, Sextus Pompeius, after the fact that he was murdered. This is an interesting time when we see some electoral reforms happening. This is a coin issued by the Monarch Licinius Nerva around 313, 312 BC. On the obverse is the bust of Roma, and on the reverse is the voting scene. This is really one of the most interesting coins struck during the Roman Republic. Gaius Marius proposed a bill affecting procedure in elections and legislative assemblies by narrowing the bridges, the gangway across which each voter passed to fill in and deposit his ballot tablet, as a result of which there was no longer room on the gangway for observers, normally aristocrats, who abused their position to influence an individual's vote. They use Facebook statistics now to influence elections, but they were more direct at that time. And here is another interesting coin, some years later than that one, about 40, 50 years after that one, issued by Cassius Longinus or Longinus, around 60 BC. On the obverse is well-diademed head of Vesta, and on the reverse is Tollgate water, dropping affirmative ballot into Sista at Legislative Assembly. Now this is interesting. This is not really a representation of the democracy, but it actually says, I vote as you propose. So he's simply telling the consuls of the time that he's supporting them. I think this series is my favorite in the Roman Republican period. Pomponius Musa decided to use the 9 muses of Apollo a pun to his name, of course. This is an incredible series, and they're so elaborately designed and executed that we can talk about each coin for quite a long time, and just this series is enough to dedicate a talk about, but we'll just continue. The Roman Republican coinage simply is about propaganda. And here is a coin by Marcus Philippus, diademed head of his ancestor Ancus Marcius on the obverse with his name, and on the reverse is the Aqua Marcia, most likely. The ancestor was responsible for building the Aqua Marcia for Rome, and he was allowed to simply use a design to advertise his family's work. Here is another interesting coin that my friend Paul drew my attention to. According to Pliny, the brother of Plauticus Plancus, Manutius Plancus, had dedicated in the capital a painting by the famed Nicomachus, a Greek painter. This painting portrayed victory leading a quadriga. Among the aristocracy of Rome, this would have been a notable event which brought honor to the Plancus family. When he needed an image to adorn the denarii struck during his tenure, he chose the scene from that painting. This is one of the very few occasions where the details of an ancient painting survive. And also Pliny tells us a little about this painter, Greek painter. Sulla's image appears, or not his image, but his likeness, his head appears on a coin posthumously struck by one of his grandchildren. And he is identified by his name on this coin. And this is the second most interesting group for me, the coin minting apparatus on the reverse of the coins of Carisius. Due to the wreath around the cap of Vulcan, it is identified as the cap of Vulcan, but I see some examples without any wreath. I don't know if these were intentionally left blank, or they maybe decided to show that it's the upper die, and the protruding area here simply tells me that this might be the upper die. Then comes Julius Caesar. His campaigns in Gaul simply brought him a lot of fame and wealth, as well as hatred. And as he became stronger militarily and monetarily, his ambitions grew, and he picked a war with the Roman Senate, with certain people, of course, but with the Roman Senate. His coinage simply tells us his ambitions, his military campaigns, and how he uses religion. Maybe in the history of Roman Republic, Caesar is the one figure that used religion the most. On this aureus, we see a female head wearing diadem and all wreath. It's not Venus, and we don't have means to identify her as a goddess, but it's just a female figure. Maybe he meant something there, but it's lost to history. And on this one, we have direct bust of Victory, and on the reverse, Ewer with handle. And here we have veiled head of Vesta, most likely not Pietas, and on the reverse, religious emblems. And the same types appear in silver, like here, and this one, and the reverse of this one. And here, he simply boasts about his power against his enemies. As an elephant, he is trampling a serpent, and he tells his opponents that he is coming to trample them. And some eagle-eyed numismatists simply deciphered the numerals behind the head of this female figure that we see on both silver and gold coins. So it is 52, and they would like to believe that it is the 52nd birthday of Caesar that coincides to 4948 BC, most likely. So it's an interesting detail. Yeah, priestly symbols. He was the Pontifex Maximus since 63, so he had the ear of the gods, and here he has the priestly symbols plus augur. So he had the office interpreting the will of the gods by studying the flight of birds. And of course, his ancestral advertisement and his huge success defeating Vercingetorix on these two types. And comes bronze coins again. This is not the mint at Rome, and most likely from a mint to the north. Mediolanum probably is suggested, but it shows the sign of normalcy. So issuing a bronze coin for after a long time during Civil War was important for us to understand what was going on. Of course, this was not so extensive. It's just one depundius, one type of coinage that we know. We don't know if they had other denominations at that time, but it is remarkable. So Caesar, as part of his increase in the number of junior magistrates, raised the monotheletes from the long-established figure of 3 to 4. So during his time, he simply appointed 4 monotheletes to strike coins. You can imagine the activity or density of activity at the Roman mint. And here we have a very, very realistic portrait. The urgency with which the Caesarian coinage of 44 BC was struck is evident from the treatment of Caesar's portrait. For the first time in the history of their office, the monotheletes could instruct their die engravers to work from the features of a living man and must instruct them to work to that man's satisfaction. It is clear that Metellus had worked earlier than his 3 colleagues. He alone struck for Caesar as Dict Quarti, possessed a fine portrait model of his engravers to follow. And right after that, the portraiture simply goes bad. And this is the first half of January. He is Caesar Dictator Quart. And this is late February 44. guess what's going to happen next month? So he started the year as Dictator Cuarto, and by February 15, he declined the offer to become king. And who else but Marcus Antonius would offer something like that? And I'm sure they simply discussed this previously between themselves, and he, Julius Caesar, being the greatest supporter of the Republic, would reject, of course, being a king. But he was offered the title Dictator Perpetuo. So, so he simply accepted that one. I'm sure it was something rigged previously, but that was the last straw that broke the back of the camel. And he was not able to see the coins that simply showed him with that title. He was not able to survive that. So these are the two types that were struck right after he was murdered. And then he was also given the title Parens Patriae, and that was also put on a coin posthumously. And look at the portraits. They almost became a caricature during that time. It's really interesting how the portraiture decayed. And then comes the time of the triumvirs. So triumviri rei publicae constituandae. So Marcus Antonius became the strongest man at Rome at that time. And Octavian was in Greece doing his studies. He was not even 20 at that time. So he set off to go to Rome and simply take over what his adopted father left for him. And Lepidus was simply another prominent figure. So when they came together, it was obvious that they were not able to work together in the same office. So they decided to divide the land among themselves, and Antonius took the Gauls, Octavian Sicily and Africa, Lepidus Spain, and Greece and the East were dominated by the conspirators Brutus and Cassius. And as the second living person to appear on coins, we see Mark Antony. And during that time, we see Mark Antony also issue smaller denominations. Canarius, most likely minted in Lugdunum. And interestingly, some eagle-eyed numismatists believe that the A here, anno, stands for anno, and XL, the Roman numeral 40. So that was the age of Mark Antony. So he was simply imitating what his patron Julius Caesar did on his coinage. At the beginning, he struck coins for the other triumvirs, and they all did the same thing. Mark Antony has a coin with Octavian, and here Lepidus has a coin with Octavian, and Octavian has coins with the others when they were all working together. So the legend here is interesting to pay attention to. So the triumviri rei publicae constituendae, consulare potestate. So 3 words for confirming the republic with consular power, and it is abbreviated as 3 vir arpe se. And guess who put his own portrait on a coin when he was so angry to see Julius Caesar had his likeness on the coin. In 42 BC, mint moving with Brutus in North Greece, he struck these famous denarii with the representation of the murder and their reasoning for that. So the Pleos, the cap of the slaves, represents the freedom of the Roman people with dagger. And Suetonius famously explains the last statement by Caesar, kai su teknon, even you, my child. There were at least 5 different dyes these coins were produced from, and even though they were not in circulation for a long time, we see plated coins. And I always suspect that the plated coins were simply produced by those who produced the original coins. And I continue thinking that way, and I think this is a good testament to that theory. They simply needed more coins, and they didn't have so much silver to produce more coins, and they simply plated bronze to simply finance their campaigns. And Sulla did the same thing, and so on and so forth. And when Mark Antony and Octavian combined their forces and defeated Brutus and Cassius at Philippi, their organization of administrative areas changed, and Mark Antony, being smarter in his mind and stronger, decided to take the richest part of the empire, and Lepidus was simply pushed away, and he was given the African provinces, and Octavian took Italy and the Gaul and Spain. And during that time, the regular production volume dropped dramatically at the Mint of Rome. Of course, 2 important money or coin producing authorities simply left, and they simply set up mints in different places. But the interesting thing is the Roman mint became the possession of Octavian. And Octavian used the mint to issue coins in his name, also simply admitting that he is one of the tremors, as we see on these coins. Here I have a very interesting and rare aureus appeared recently in the market. We didn't have a good representation of Lepidus on any coins, but this one is really striking. Bare head of his of Lepidus, and on the reverse is Mars, and with his Tremor titles. And this one is also very interesting in that the young son of Mark Antony, Antonius Jr., or Antillus, appears on the reverse of this coin. And Mark Antony's Asian mints, Ephesus, produced 2 coins on the occasion of his marriage to Octavianus's sister, Octavia, in the Sistophoric denomination. And he also produced a coin with his wife in a gold denomination. This was probably produced by a mint moving with Mark Antony at that time. And during that time, he was able to subdue the Armenian kingdom. So he advertises his success on the reverse of this denarius. And times change, and he decides to consort with the Egyptian queen, and there she takes the other side of his coinage. This one is really interesting in that behind his head is still, he has the Armenian tiara, and on the reverse, the queen of Egypt simply advertises her power. Cleopatra reginae regum filiorum regum, queen of kings and of her sons who are kings. She's not so modest. And this might not be considered a Republican coin, but it has Greek legend, not Latin legend, but it is a remarkable coin, a well-known type. And on the obverse this time, we have Cleopatra, and on the reverse is Marcus Antonius with his titles. Mark Antony issued a legendary series of coins that are called legionary denarius. They were all marked by the legion numbers. Apparently, the first one, number 1, was called 3. I was not able to find a photograph of a coin with the pre mark. And the references that I referred to didn't have any either. But some references simply stated that there were 23 legions represented on this. But while researching for this talk, I found examples with 3XXX. So apparently there were at least 30 legions, or somehow Mark Antony wanted to show the world that he had 30 legions at his disposal. So is it a fact, or it's something that Mark Antony played with? We don't know. But then there are 2 enigmatic issues in that the normal Roman numerals are not used, but this one is 4th legion with 3 1 1 1 1 4 1 1 1 1, and then this one, instead of regular 8, it says 11x. So it's really remarkable that he used different numerals on these 2 issues. Then he had gold issues. These are extremely rare, and I can understand gold being such a precious metal. They must have been picked up by Octavian and smelted and used to strike other coins. But this one also shows 20, the 20th Legion. So it's really interesting. We don't know if he had from 3 to 20 marked coins in gold, but I could see quite a few of them. One other interesting thing here is the Damnatio Memoria here. As you see, the name of Antony was erased, scraped. Octavian was victorious. This is on the way to Act 2. On the obverse of this coin is the head of Venus with Stephanie. And on the reverse, Octavian himself advancing, extending arm and holding spear. And he is Caesar Divi Filius. And here he is back from Act 2. Now he's himself on the coin, and on the reverse is Venus standing, seen from the back with drapery covering only her thighs, holding transverse scepter in left hand, resting left elbow on column and holding helmet in right hand. And then we have a shield resting on the column. The war is over. Octavian is successful and peace is back. And to attest to that, Scarpus was one of the generals of Antony, offered his friendship to Octavian, and I'm sure he immediately minted these coins. I mean, Octavian immediately minted these coins to advertise his influence, his power over the military powers against him. And he continues to advertise his success in many different ways. This was a naval victory that he achieved, and his title immediately changes. As you see on this coin, you still see on these coins, you still see Caesar Divi F and Caesar Divi F. However, right after that, it changes to Imperator Caesar. He doesn't have to simply advertise himself as the son of that Caesar. He is Imperator now. And all the representations coming afterwards simply advertises his sole power. This one is really interesting in that he wanted to show how he protected the Roman Senate. So on the obverse is his bare head, and on the reverse is the Roman Senate House, Curia Julia, and with his title on the architrave. And here he is shown sitting on a curule chair. Why do we have curule chair? As you know, gods and goddesses and kings are mostly pictured in thrones. Thrones are for kings. Curule chairs were portable chairs. They were used tentatively for short terms. So Roman senators, Roman consuls were elected for 1 year. Maybe they could be elected again for the second, third time, but their position was always temporary. That's why they are seated on Sella Curulis, a temporary seat, not a throne. And here it is interesting to see that Octavian is seated on that chair. And this one simply advertises what he did for the Roman people. Even though this was minted at Ephesus, where the language is Greek actually, this coin has Latin legend on the obverse. It simply says, Imperator Caesar Deve Filis Cos 6 Libertatis PR Windex, champion of the constitutional liberties of the Roman people. And on the reverse is peace. And reluctantly, he accepts the title Augustus in 27 BC. So the Senate gave him this title. On the obverse we see his bare head, and he's being the consul for the 7th time for saving the citizens. On the reverse is eagle behind an oak wreath, behind 2 palm branches, and Augustus SC. The letters SC, by decree of the Senate, refers to the Senate's grant of these exceptional honors, not to the issue of this coin. So we have to keep that in mind. This is the picture of the imperial expansion of the Roman Republic. It's not a kingdom. It's still a republic, but dominating over the Mediterranean world completely. Here I have some further reading references for you. I have referred to at least 4 of these references. Crawford's Coinage and Money under the Roman Republic is an incredible reference. Sutherland's Roman Coins is another one that I refer to a lot. So I would definitely recommend that you consider reading these. The secondhand copies are available on Amazon and sometimes on eBay. The Italian AS Grave and Italian AS Rude Signatum and the AS Grave of Sicily by Turlo and Vecchi is an expensive book to obtain, unless you're interested in that area. You might not want to have it, but all the others are interesting references that I can recommend. And again, you can go to YouTube for the previous recordings of the talks, and to download the presentations on my academia page. And then we will be talking about the Roman imperial coinage next time. And I'm ready to take your questions if you have any.